Are you passionate about your professional future but not sure what's next? The Ohio State University Fisher College of Business can take your education and career to the next level with its highly ranked working professional MBA. With flexibility to earn a degree entirely on campus, online, or a mix of both, an MBA from Ohio State is more accessible than ever. To get started, visit go.osu.edu/WPMBA, the Ohio State University Max M. Fisher College of Business, where principled leaders are created.
The Two-Footed Podcast is brought to you by EPLindex.com and our presenting sponsor, Liberty Shield. Liberty Shield is a VPN provider. A virtual privacy network allows you to go online, change your location, access things you're geo-blocked from, while keeping your data safe. So, as an example, if you are a UK expat and want access to BBC iPlayer to watch Match of the Day, or ITV Hub, or all four, but you get that message that says this content is not available in your location, a Liberty Shield VPN gets you around that block, allows you to watch whatever you want on those services while also keeping your data safe. And it goes further than that. It allows you to open up Netflix's entire library by just changing your IP address. Liberty Shield is the #1 rated VPN provider on Trustpilot with 5-star ratings across the board. So go to libertyshield.com right now, use the code EPL25 and get either the hardware package or the software package. The hardware package is a router that you plug into your existing router, and any item you want to change the IP address on, be it your phone or your television, you connect that to the new Liberty Shield router. All other items can remain connected to your existing router. There's also a software package which is instantly downloadable to your device and you can get using straight away. Again, libertyshield.com, EPL25 for 25% off at checkout. We're also brought to you by Home of Hopcroft, a giftware and homeware company located in Scotland but shipping worldwide. Check out homeofhopcroft.co.uk and do check out the EPL Index and Anfield Index shops, which you'll find on Etsy. Use the codes EPL10 or RED10 for 10% off at checkout. And lastly, do remember to check out A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. That podcast is on this feed before every Premier League match week. And then the EPL Roundtable, hosted by Kevin DeVries, on its own EPL Roundtable feed. So just search EPL Roundtable in your podcast device. And that's out after every match week. Now, on with the show. What's good, boys and girls? Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Thursday. It is the 7th of December. Hope you're all well. Hope you enjoyed some Premier League action last night. But we had some expected results and some unexpected performances. Sheffield United 0, Liverpool 2. Virgil van Dijk and Dominic Szoboszlai with the goals. Liverpool not at their best, but more than good enough to beat the Blades and move within 2 points of Arsenal. Sheffield United stay bottom of the league, 2 points behind Burnley, 5 points from Luton and what would be safety. But Everton still have a game to play in this round, so that could grow. Fulham 5, Nottingham Forest 0. I'm not really sure what's going on with Fulham at the moment, but they have discovered that you can score more than one goal in a game. Fulham have scored 11 goals in their last 3 games. They had scored 10 in the 12 games before that. Last night, they were absolutely rampant. Iwobi scored, Jimenez scored again, Iwobi scored again, and then Tom Kearney wrapped it up late on. it is great to see Raul Jimenez scoring goals and enjoying his football, because it's been a tough few years for him since that horrendous head injury. He's never quite become the player he was when he had, like, before that injury. So seeing him scoring, seeing him enjoying his football is really positive. And that's a great win for Fulham. And they move to 12th in the league. They are 1 point off Brentford and Chelsea, 3 points behind West Ham. That goal does wonders, or that game does wonders for their goal difference. They move from -10 to -5, which is a lot more respectable. They've exactly the same record as Wolves. They've scored one more and they've conceded one more, but same goal difference, same points, same wins, same draws. All very, very positive. For Fulham right now, Marco Silva continues to do one of the best jobs in the Premier League. Someone not doing a particularly good job is Roy Hodgson. Crystal Palace beaten 2-0 at home last night by Bournemouth. Goals from Senesi and Kiefer Moore. Palace were just listless. And Hodgson coming out after the game and saying that the fans have been spoiled. I'm really not sure what he's talking about. Finishing 11th, 12th, and 14th in the last 5 seasons is not spoiling your fans. Winning no more than 7 home games in a season is not spoiling your fans. And that's what the case has been for 5 years. 2 seasons of 5, a year of 6, and 2 seasons of 7. Not great. Only 1 home win so far this season for Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace fans have the right to be annoyed. The football they're playing is dreadful. There's no ambition. Arguably their best ever player, Wilf Zaha, left in the summer for free. I would imagine part of that decision that Wilf made was on Roy Hodgson being appointed as full-time manager again. It was pretty clear that Wilf had more than enough of Roy Hodgson the first time around. It was notable that the Wilf leaving rumours all kind of went away when it was Patrick Vieira there and Wilf was enjoying his football. Wilf left it late in the summer as well to decide that he was going to go and play for Galatasaray. So I do wonder if Palace had been ambitious in the summer and maybe gone and gotten Graham Potter, would Wilf have been convinced to stay? If I was Crystal Palace, I would be making overtures at Graham Potter right now. I think Hodgson is many years past the point of being a real Premier League manager. He has no ambition. He has no urge to finish anywhere above 12th to 13th. And I think it's time that they moved on from him. Graham Potter is a really good manager who's done really well at a club of similar size in Brighton. I don't see any reason that Crystal Palace cannot be a top half team. You look at that team, they've got good goalkeepers. Dean Henderson, obviously out injured at the moment, but he's a very good goalkeeper. Sam Johnson's a good goalkeeper. Mitchell's a really good left back. You've got 2 outstanding centre backs, and in Chris Richards, a very good third. They need a right back. Now, losing Doucouré is massive, but they have Jefferson Lerma. They have Ahamada. They have Will Hughes. They have Jeffrey Schlupp. They need one more in midfield. And then in attack, I mean, you've got Matthias Franke. He's not even getting off the bench. You've got Elise, Eze when he comes back. That's a really strong attacking midfield group. They could do with another winger. They've got young Abue. I'd like to see him get more opportunities. And they need someone that can be more reliable in front of goal than Edouard and Mateta. So if Mateta does leave in January, as has been rumoured, they need to go and bring in another striker. But I do think the biggest thing they need is a new manager. I just don't think Roy Hodgson should be managing in the Premier League at this point. Like, that man retired a couple of years ago. And then he took on the Watford job. And what he did there was nothing short of a disgrace. Like, he's claiming that the fans are spoiled. They've won 1 in 8 at home. 1 in 8. And he's claiming that they're spoiled. And they're not even getting to watch good football because he refuses to play good football. For Bournemouth, though, what a turnaround. 10 points from the last 4 games, which, when you contrast to 6 points from the previous 11 is a hell of a turnaround. Irola's style is now settling in. The team are reacting to what the manager's asking them to do, and they're working hard for each other. Defensively, they look a lot better. In midfield, they look more solid, and they're finding ways to get goals. They go above Forest with that win last night, combined with Forest's hammering. And I think they'll be looking at Crystal Palace, who they're now level on points with. And they're looking at Wolves and they're looking at Fulham and thinking, there's no reason we can't finish above these teams. We have every bit as much talent as these teams. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops for them moving forward. Brighton 2, Brentford 1. Brian Mbomo put Brentford 1 up from the penalty spot after Van Heck committed the foul in the box. Pascal Gross equalised 4 minutes later with a really well-taken goal. And then Jack Hinchelwood, the teenager who sort of plays here, there and everywhere for them, played at right back last night, pops up at the back post, his header, crossed the goal. Mark Flecking can't get to it. Brighton win the game. And what a moment for the youngster, his first goal in senior football. Brentford will probably be a little bit disappointed, but overall, they're 11th in the league, and they've done this without Ivan Toney. You wouldn't place them as having any risk of, a collapse. I think they're going to be bottom half, but comfortable from any kind of relegation battle. Much needed win for Brighton, obviously. They've had that bad run of form, but that's 2 wins out of 3. Still yet to keep a clean sheet in the Premier League this season, which is quite an interesting approach, but look, they'll be happy enough. They're 8th in the league. They're only 2 points behind Manchester United and Tottenham, who are 6th and 5th respectively. And they've been through their blip early on. You'd expect that as they get players back, you look at the team last night, and it's very clear they're in the middle of a bit of an injury crisis when Hinchelwood and Gross are playing as the fullbacks. And on the bench, you've got Benicio Baker-Botey, Lee Robert Kavanagh, Luca Barrington, and Mark O'Mahony. They're all very, very talented, I'm sure, but they're all very, very young. But that's what they've been forced to call upon right now. I think it speaks to the fact that even with this dip, even with these injuries, De Zerbi continues to do a very good job. Manchester United 2, Chelsea 1. McTominay on 19 put United 1 up. Cole Palmer equalised just on the stroke of half-time. McTominay missed a big, big chance with a header, and then a second big chance when the ball bounced back to him after Sanchez saved the first one, and he could do nothing, only redirect it directly at Robert Sanchez a second time. And United's performance last night was better than some of what we've seen recently, but they weren't good by any stretch. McTominay did make it 2-1 in the 69th minute to give them the win. This was a game between two bad teams, frankly. And I know United are 6th in the table. They're ahead of Newcastle, but Newcastle play tonight. They're level on points with Spurs, but Spurs play tonight. And United probably feel quite good about things. They're only 3 points behind City, but United shouldn't feel quite good about things. That's their first win against a top half team. Chelsea are 10th. Chelsea aren't good. That's Chelsea's 6th defeat of the season. Between the two teams, they've lost 12 games. They've conceded 42 goals. They've only scored 44 goals. These are not good teams. These are not good teams at all. But United will take confidence from that win. Now they play Bournemouth next, and that's going to be tough considering Bournemouth are in better form, but United should still win that. But then it gets really tough for them. Then they get Bayern, they go away to Liverpool, away to West Ham, and then they get Villa. So I think United's Christmas might be a bit miserable. But they'll take heart from last night's win. They shouldn't take too much heart from their season to date, though, because, like I say, they've only now beaten one team in the top half, and that's the team in 10th. They've had a very easy run of games when you look at who they have beaten: Wolves, Forest, Burnley, Brentford, Sheffield United, Fulham, Luton, Everton, and Chelsea. Like, you couldn't have asked for an easier run. But what really would concern me if I was a United fan is the lack of goals. This season, Bruno Fernandes has 6 goals. That's pretty good for a midfielder, but only 3 of them have come in the league. Anthony Martial has 1 in the league, 2 in all competitions. Rashford has 2 in the league, and that's it for all competitions. Rasmus Højlund hasn't scored yet in the league. He has got 5 in the Champions League, though. Christian Eriksen scored 1 goal in all competitions. Garnacho's got 1 in the league, 3 in all competitions. Anthony is yet to score in any competition. Sancho obviously is not playing. He's yet to score in any competition. Scott McTominay has 5 league goals, making him their top league scorer by 2. And he's their joint top scorer. He's their joint top scorer in all competitions, along with Bruno. No, he's got 1 more than Bruno. Excuse me. He's got 1 more than Bruno in all competitions. Scott McTominay is Manchester United's primary attacking weapon. That is cause for concern. Mason Mount, who they spent 60 million on, yet to score a goal this season. He's an attacking midfielder. They're not very good at all. And they've got some serious issues that they're going to need to address when they start to play tough teams. Final game last night, the performance of the night: Aston Villa 1, Manchester City 0, and that doesn't tell the tale of the tape. 22 shots for Villa, 2 for Manchester City. Erling Haaland had 2 shots in the span of about 10 to 15 seconds. Well, a shot and then a header, which Emi Martinez saved. And that's the only shots City had in the entire game. Those shots were in like the 13th minute or something like that. It was early in the game. City didn't have a shot after that. City didn't have a corner in the entire game. Villa had 22 shots, 7 on target, and 6 corners. Villa dominated the game. Controlled where it was played, cut City open, should have scored a couple more. Ederson made a couple of good saves. They hit the post. They missed a couple of chances that they should have taken. But they were so much better than City last night. It was very strange to see. You don't generally see a Pep Guardiola team get outplayed like that. And I would argue it's definitely the most his team have been outplayed in a game since probably the game against Liverpool at Anfield, where Liverpool beat them 4-3, but City got 2 late goals to make it look a little bit closer than it actually was. You just don't see City have these troubles. This is only the second time that City under Pep have gone 4 games without a win. The other time was in his first season there. Now, they will point to the fact that these 4 games where they haven't won have been Chelsea away, Liverpool, Tottenham, and now Villa. So a big 6 rival and 3 of the 5 best teams in the country. But still, they don't look quite themselves. Now, they didn't have Rodri last night. They didn't have KDB, obviously. They are missing Ilkay Gundogan. They're missing him significantly. They're only just getting Kovacic and Nunez back from injury now. I still think they'll win the league. I think they'll go on a strong run once they have their pieces together. It would be no surprise if they went and spent in January. But there is just certain signs of weakness in this team that we hadn't seen before. And that should be something that the other teams competing for the title, Arsenal, Liverpool, Villa, I think you've got to throw them in just at the moment, based on current form, based on how dominant they are at home, 7 wins from 7. The fact that They're now third in the league. They're only 4 points off top. They play Arsenal at home at the weekend. I fancy them to beat Arsenal at home at the weekend. If they win that game, they're only 1 point behind Arsenal. Now, Liverpool play Crystal Palace and will likely win that game and go top. But there's Villa can solidify themselves in the top four this weekend if they beat Arsenal. And when you're in that position and you're only a couple of points off top, you have to be talked about in those. Even if you don't think they'll sustain it, which I don't, you still have to talk about them when we talk about teams that could win the league. Because look, Villa could go in January and spend 150 million. They've got the money. They've got the owners that'd be willing to do it. They've got a really good director of football who's an outstanding talent spotter. They're well set up. You look at that team defensively, Emi Martinez is outstanding. Ezri Konsa, I really like at right back. Carlos and Torres, they formed a very good partnership. Digne or Moreno at left back, give them that attacking outlet. Kamara and Luis are brilliant together in midfield. McGinn is playing well. Watkins is playing well. Yuri Tielemans is now starting to contribute. Obviously, Diaby's had a really good start to the season, but now he's just hit a little bit of a dip, so Emery's taken him out of the team. They've still got him and Jacob Ramsey to come into that team that started last night and ran Villa off the pitch, or ran City off the pitch. Jacob Ramsey could be a massive, massive addition. Because I would argue Ramsey and Diaby are two of their 5 best players, with Kamara, Watkins and Luis. They're a formidable team. They really are a formidable team. There's no one position now you'd look at and say that's a weakness. Like John McGinn is playing the football of his career. Emery really has him homing. You could upgrade on him for sure, but it might just upset the apple cart a little bit to do it mid-season. Other than that, I mean, maybe you go and you buy an upgraded left back, but they've got 2 decent left backs. Doesn't seem like you should spend money there at the moment. Maybe their best option is just to look for a bit more depth. Maybe to bring in another striker. Said before, I'd love to see them go and get Ivan Toney or Tammy Abraham, but Ivan Toney in particular. I just love to see him and Watkins together. I think it'd be absolutely incredible. And then longer term, you're going to have Diaby and Ramsey as the wide midfielders. You've got that double pivot. In defence, you might look to upgrade left back. You might look to upgrade on Carlos. But this is a very good team with a very good manager, very well-run club, and a club very much on the up. So they were brilliant last night. Congrats to them. Hopefully they're brilliant again at the weekend, because if they play like that against Arsenal, they will beat Arsenal. They will beat Arsenal. Arsenal are not as good as Man City. Even with City and the poor run of form they're in, Arsenal are not as good as Man City. They're weaker defensively. They're certainly weaker in goal. They don't have the same experience of managing their way through games when they're not playing well. And Arsenal looked very, very shaky against Luton. Very, very shaky. And especially on set pieces. And Villa are a big team. With Watkins, with Carlos, with Torres, all in that box on set pieces. They've got great set piece delivery from the likes of McGinn and Digne and Douglas Luiz, obviously. I think they're going to cause Arsenal a lot of problems, and I think they'll beat Arsenal at the weekend. We have 2 games tonight. Everton take on Newcastle at 7:30 and Tottenham take on West Ham at 8:15. So both of them should be good. Obviously, Newcastle looking to win to get themselves back closer to the top 4. A win will mean they're only 1 point behind Man City. Everton need a win to climb out of the bottom 3, but I don't think you'd fancy them really to beat Newcastle. Tottenham against West Ham. Spurs looking to get level on points with City. City will still have the goal difference advantage, but also looking to win for the first time after, 3 straight defeats and then the draw against City. Spurs want to get back on track and back to winning ways. So this will be a tough game. West Ham are no pushover, but they're also not all that good. I know they sit ninth in the league, but they've had some really shaky results. The recent wins are over Forest and West Ham. I thought they were very poor against Crystal Palace. They were poor against Brentford. They lost to Everton. They got hammered by Aston Villa. I think Spurs win tonight. I think Newcastle and Spurs win tonight. I'm going to take a break. When we come back, we'll do some listeners' questions, we'll do some gossip, and we'll be done. It'll be a shorter pod today by the looks of things. So that's fine. See you in a sec.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger. Because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Right, welcome back. So it is questions day. So we have a couple on Discord. I know I got one on Twitter, but I fear I have lost it. Yeah, I fear I have lost the question I was sent for on Twitter. And let me see. Okay, I'm just going to answer this one because it was sent in by Stephen Smith. It was actually for the Daily Red and I forgot to do it. Could Liverpool start to see Dominic Szoboszlai pushed onto the flank in readiness for Mo Salah's departure to AFCON? I suspect he could start left wing tonight. That was before yesterday's game, after being withdrawn early on Sunday and the front three all playing 90. A new defensive midfielder in January would facilitate an extra midfielder into the eights and thus allow Dom to play right wing for that month, or do you see Harvey Elliott / Diogo Jota as the more likely? A defensive midfielder just brings more than the obvious plus points. Do you agree? Yeah, so let's answer that second part first. So people have this idea in their heads that a defensive midfielder only helps you defensively, but it doesn't. The defensive midfielder makes you better going forward as well, because they provide a platform for you to press off and to play off. You look at the great teams in history that had great defensive midfielders, and they were also exceptional going forward. And a big part of that is that platform, that defensive solidity. And when you have that, you can commit your fullbacks further forward. You can commit your number eights further forward. You don't have to be as concerned about what's behind when you've got someone there like a Rodri, a Busquets, a Roy Keane, a Gilberto Silva, a Frank Rijkaard, people like this. You don't need to be as concerned. Liverpool with Fabinho for years could commit extra bodies forward, knowing that he was behind them. So City with Fernandinho were exactly the same. So, yeah, I think a defensive midfielder brings you that. Like with Liverpool's current situation, it would also free Alexis McAllister up to play more of his natural role as an 8. So they'd have Alexis, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, Dominic Szoboszlai and Ryan Gravenberch as 8 options. And when he comes back, Stefan Bajcetic could play as an 8, because that's what he is, though the 8s in this Liverpool shape don't really suit him. He'd suit more the Trent Alexander-Arnold role, but Thiago could play as one of the 8s if and when he ever comes back. So yeah, the defensive midfielder helps that massively. Also frees up the opportunities to move Dominic and Harvey into the attacking third. I would be in favour of trying Dom on the wing for AFCON. I think you could also try Luis Diaz on the right, and maybe that sparks him back into a bit of form because he's been quite poor this season. You could play Dominic on the left in that scenario. I'd quite like to see Dominic play on the left with the current group, with Mo in the team. I'd like to see Mo, Darwin, Dominic. And then in midfield, maybe you go Alexis, Endo, Curtis Jones, obviously with the hope to upgrade on Endo in January. So yeah, I wouldn't be against Dominic playing in the front three, left or right. I think he can do a job both sides. Certainly right side could be interesting. Could be very interesting when Mo's gone, because, I mean, to lose that caliber of player for a prolonged period is always tough. But it does not a huge chunk of games. It's more who the games are against. Liverpool played Chelsea and I believe Arsenal in the time that Mo was slated to be away. Okay, Matt JT. If the Premier League did the following NHL-style awards, who do you think would be the current frontrunners so far this season? So you've got the Hart Memorial, which is the MVP, the Calder Award, which is for Rookie of the Year, the Vicina, which is for the best goalkeeper, the Selk, which is for the best defensive forward, Adams, which is for the best coach, Norris, which is for the best defender. Which can we name that after Bobby Orr at this point? Because clearly the greatest defender in NHL history. The Gregory for the best GM, the Lady Byng, which is for sportsmanship, the Messier for on-field leadership, and the Masterson, which is for basically like a comeback player of the year. So, right, let's start with the Hart Memorial. So an MVP. Who has been the MVP of the league this season? I think you can make a really strong argument for probably Maddison's injury takes him out of the mix. But I look at Villa and Douglas Luiz and how good he's been. I think he'd be at least a ballot option. I think Rodri, in the fact that even though he wouldn't be in my team of the season so far, the fact that City have lost 4 games this season and they've all been for the games where he was suspended, that proves how valuable he is to them. So that's kind of his case. More what his team are when he's not there. Like when he is there, they're the best team in the league. When he's not, they're 4th. So he'd have to be in. I think Bukayo Saka has been carrying a big load for Arsenal this season, so he'd be in. And I think Van Dijk and Salah would both have to be in. If I had to pick a front runner, I'd probably go Salah. You could also include Erling Haaland just based on the goals, but I think I'd go Mohamed Salah so far. When you look at the goals, the assists, and everything else that he does, I think it would be him. Rookie of the Year. So we're looking at either a player new into the division or a breakthrough academy graduate. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to overlook Moussa Diaby and what he's done. I think he's been outstanding. But I think Pape Matar Sarr, if I can count him, because he did play prior to this, but this was the first year where he was sort of given a regular starting role. He played 11 times last year. He's already played 12 in the Premier League this season. If I can't have him, I'll go. If we can go like the baseball way, where you can play a certain amount of games one year and then still count as Rookie of the Year the next year, then we'll go Pape Matar Sarr. If you can't, I'll go Moussa Diaby, who I think has been phenomenally good. Arsenal signings weren't new. Liverpool, I mean, Szoboszlai's been great, but I don't think he's been quite as good recently. Yeah, we'll go Sarr or Diaby, depending on what the allowance is. Goalie is Alisson, and it's Alisson by a country mile. Best defensive forward. I mean, I don't seem like I'm just picking Liverpool players, but Darwin is hard to beat. But Ollie Watkins has is great at that as well. I would have said Heung-min somebody scored an own goal the other day. Rasmus Højlund in terms of defending for the opponent, pretty good. Do you know who? I talked about him earlier, and the fact he's scoring goals and he seems to be enjoying himself again. But Raul Jimenez is brilliant defensively. brilliant defensively. He did misplace a header against Liverpool that led directly to a goal, but I don't think you can blame him for that because it's one of the goals of the season. I'll go with Raul Jimenez for best defensive forward. The Adams Award for best coach, it has to be Unai Emery, and it's Unai Emery by a country mile. A country mile. The guy's done an unbelievable. Nobody has done a better job in England since the moment he took over at Villa. They are such a good team, and he's doing an incredible job. Defender is Virgil. So that's the Norris Award. GM. I mean, Monchi hasn't been at Villa long enough to really have had a huge impact. Kind of come in at the end of the window, so it wouldn't be him, despite the fact he's done that they've done a really good job rebuilding. Cheeky Bergerstein's been exceptional for the few years, but obviously they haven't had a great season thus far. Dan Ashworth, you could look at it at Newcastle. I think he's done very, very well. I think I'll go Dan Ashworth at Newcastle. I think I'll go with him because I don't think you can make a strong case for Edu. He overpaid on Rice. He overpaid on Havertz. Havertz has been poor. Timber hasn't played. The Raya thing. And the new contract for Ramsdale as well. Like, I don't think you can go with him. Sportsmanship. I think I would go Bukayo Saka. I get the feeling everybody likes Bukayo Saka. And he plays the game the right way. He doesn't hurl himself on the ground and doesn't roll around like Grealish or anything like that. He gets kicked a lot, but I think I'd go with him. Messier for the On-Field Leadership Award. I mean, Odegaard always stands out for me for on-field leadership. He's always the one that lifts Arsenal. But McGinn deserves mention. Virgil deserves mention. Last on the list would be Bruno. I mean, and last in the league would be Bruno Fernandes. I think I'd go Martin Odegaard. And kind of the Masterson for comeback player of the year, Pedro Neto. Without a shadow of a doubt, it's him. So yeah, there we go. Right, AMK 2889. What decade would you say has been the prime of football so far? Do you think that decade can be topped? Also, frequently when I watch Liverpool home games, every so often I'll hear over the PA system something about Operation Anfield exercise. What is that? So Operation Anfield exercise is basically the operation to evacuate Anfield should there be a bomb threat, a fire, an explosion in the kitchens, or, you know, any kind of major threat where they need to get everybody out. And the idea is that they need to be able to empty the stadium in like under 5 minutes. So Operation Anfield exercise is for the stewards to go to the places in the ground that they've been assigned should they need to evacuate the ground. It often leads to visiting fans performing stretches and lunges, which is quite amusing. But that's what it is. It's basically, if the worst happens here and we need to evacuate the ground, let's run through the practice. And they do it every game. Sometimes they do it twice a game. But that is what that is. As for the best decade, I mean, the 80s had great international tournaments. It also, in my view, had the best team of all time with Saki's Milan. You had some really interesting winners of the European Cup in a way that I don't think we'll ever see again. Like, you go back and you look at who won the finals in the 80s. So it is Nottingham Forest in 80, going back to back. Liverpool, Aston Villa, Hamburg, Liverpool, Juventus, Steaua Bucharest, Porto, PSV Eindhoven, and then Milan go back to lead us to 1990. You'll never see Nottingham Forest, Hamburg, Steaua Bucharest, or PSV win the Champions League again. It's highly unlikely that Porto will win it again. It's highly unlikely that Villa will win it again. Liverpool, Juve, and Milan, they're all mega clubs. But to have that sort of diversity was great. In the 90s, obviously, Milan win in 90. Red Star, Barca, Marseille, Milan, Ajax, Juve, Dortmund, Real, United, and Real win 99-2000. You won't see Red Star win it again. I have a tough time seeing Ajax win it again. But all the rest realistically could. The issue for me with the 80s, which I think would be my pick, is Heysel and Hillsborough. So it's hard to call something where there's two enormous tragedies like that at the peak of the game. So I'll go with the 1990s, because we did have really good international tournaments. The World Cup in 90 was great. Euro 92 was great. The World Cup in 94 was great. Euro 96 is one of the best tournaments ever, maybe the best. 98 World Cup was great. And then even the 2000 Euros was pretty good. So we had great international tournaments. We had good European Cups, UEFA Cups, Cup Winners' Cups. It was a tough time to be a Liverpool fan because your biggest rival was dominant in English football, but the 90s were fantastic. And like you think of the players that were there. The 80s, though, like Maradona in his peak in the 80s, Hullet, Van Basten, and Rijkaard at Milan, Zico, like that's really tough to beat what we had in the 80s. The 90s were great, and we had wonderful players, and you had the emergence of Ronaldo and Zidane and Rivaldo and George Weah winning winning World Player of the Year, the first time and only time an African player has won it. The 80s or the 90s, that's when I would actually say, I'll go with the 90s. I'll go with the 90s, even though the 80s, I think, had a bit more of a curiosity about it because you had, I think, just more diversity in terms of who was winning what, in all competitions, European and domestic across the major leagues. But I'll go with the 90s. I do think that is the right answer. Speaking of winning things, just because I mentioned it yesterday, congrats to Palmeiras, who won the Brazilian Serie A title last night. They got a draw against Cruzeiro. Grêmio ended up winning, and they finish in second, led by Luis Suarez. Atletico Mineiro failed to win last night. They actually didn't fail to win. They lost, as did Flamengo, as did Botafogo, and as did Fluminense. So some queer results last night in Brazil. But what an achievement by Abel Ferreira. So congrats to him. Anyway, moving on. The Mauritian one. I recently watched the docu-film La Bella Stagione, which depicts Sampdoria's title in 1991, and that team was quite special with Pagliuca, Viekovod, Lombardo, Vialli, and Mancini. I saw that the transfer policy was quite impressive as well. They sold Pagliuca, Jugovic, Hullet, Platt, Lombardo, brought in Chiesa, Zenga, Karambou, Seedorf. They also signed, you've mentioned that. They sold Seedorf and Chiesa, brought in Veron and Montella. How did Sampdoria contribute to the narrative of Italian football during the 90s? And why were they unable to constantly break into the top 3 or 4? Lastly, Sampdoria have so many great kits. What will be your top 3? Okay, so fully agree with what you said about the transfer policy. The issue is that they always had like 5 or 6 really good players, a couple of average ones, and a couple that were well below par. they never fully had the strength and depth. They never had the financial backing. Like, they were always having to sell in order to buy, sell one to buy two. And they never quite got to the point where they could sell one to buy one or not sell anybody to buy one. And there was a lot of financial mismanagement at that club, as we've seen in recent years once again. But back then, I think money was been filtered out of the club, and they constantly found themselves in debt. Like, they sold Seedorf and Chiesa, bring in Varane and Montella, and there's money that went missing there. That they should have been able to buy a third player and continue to strengthen. So their issue always was that they just couldn't fill out the team. They were like a slightly lesser version of Parma, where Parma had money been pumped in and they were selling and reinvesting it. They were selling and reinvesting, but money wasn't been put in on top of it. So it's the old Rafa Benitez thing about having the duvet that's not quite long enough to cover your head and your feet. They never had quite the right amount of money to be able to buy the left back that they might have needed or the winger that they might have needed. So they'd have a really good spine, but the flanks would be poor. And unfortunately for them, that's just how it went. In terms of best kits, let me have a quick look at this. I have to say, I do like the new one. I think the new kit is a really cool throwback to the great kits they've had in the past. The Asics kits are obviously the best that they've had. Let's go back down the years and find. We're going to be looking for. So, to be fair, some of the Kappa kits they had were very cool as well. I would say the 1991 title-winning home kit, the 94-95 away kit, the 96-97 third kit, the black one. Maybe my favorite is the 97-98 special kit they did, which is half blue, half white with no sponsors logo. Really, really like that one. And you know what? 87-88 away, white with the 2 blue and 1 red stripe running down the right-hand side. We'll go with that. It has a better collar, I think, than the ones that came before it. But you know what's funny is back then you look at a kit, and for 3 years they had the same kit. You know, their away kit didn't really change from 82-83 up until 87-88. Just stayed the same. I like that, actually, so I'll go with that one. The one that stayed the same and meant people weren't having to fork out every year. But yeah, the bigger thing is why they couldn't quite compete. They just couldn't. They could never quite get the full team to the level it needed to be at. You'd also have to remember it was an incredibly strong period in Serie A. You had great Juve teams, great Milan teams. You had a strong Napoli for the first part of the decade when they had Maradona. You had very strong Inter teams. You had Parma. You had Fiorentina. You had both Rome clubs. Like, there was so much competition for resources, for players. Even like Torino would have the odd really good season. Atalanta would have the odd good season. Serie A was just, it was a war back then. It was just such a strong league. Isaac Gilding, question for the pod. You've mentioned several times that your favourite player ever is Michael Laudrup, who's possibly the most graceful player ever. But we also know of your love for Suarez and Tevez, scrappy types of strikers. Types of players. Do you think one playing style is superior to the other? Other than Laudrup, do you have a favourite graceful and scrappy player? And if a team of high-end graceful players play a team of high-end scrappy players, who do you think might come out on top? I think a team of high-end scrappy players will always win the day. I do subscribe to the thought process that you only need 3 lads that can play the piano and 8 lads that can carry the piano. But I think if you've got 11 piano carriers, they will beat 11 piano players. So I'll go for a team of high-end scrappy players. Give me big bruising brutes. Other than Laudrup, favourite graceful player Zidane. After him, Baggio. They'd be my top 3 in terms of, and Kaká would be in that mix as well, but he'd be 4th. But Zidane and Baggio would be the next 2. Dennis Bergkamp would round out the top 5 for certain. Scrappy players. Tevez, Suarez, obviously. Mascherano. Carlos Puyol. Roy Keane. Like, if that's my team of scrappy lads, nobody's beating them. Nobody's beating them. I don't think there's one correct way of playing, but I would rather have a team of scrappers than a team of graceful players. As beautiful as the football might be with that team of graceful players, I prefer functionality. So I think the team of scrappy players would win. And that's it. That's all we have for today. So I will see you all tomorrow. I'm recording that immediately after this because I'm not available tomorrow. So it is just going to be the predictions for the week. Myself and Guy will go through the 10 games. But I'm sure we'll go on a tangent somewhere because it's what we do. So, yeah, see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Podcast Network.
Let's face it, most people aren't making massive turkey feasts on the regular, and after 364 days of not thinking about it, it can be hard to get that bird just right. That's where Instacart, the holiday rescue app, comes in. From getting all the ingredients to prep a full seasonal spread to getting last-minute swaps in a turkey emergency, Instacart has everything a holiday host needs to save face and save dinner. And right now, if you download Instacart, you get free delivery on your first 3 orders and delivery in as fast as 1 hour. Offer valid for a limited time. $10 minimum per order. Additional terms apply.